Coming up next on Art Rocks, Louisiana's newest children's museum is a voyage of discovery for Gulf Coast kids.
I knew that children's museums bring people together. Our favorite children's museum is actually in a small town in Mississippi, and I thought if they could have a children's museum, Baton Rouge should have a children's museum.
An artist imagines gardens for his favorite composers.
I was listening to Mozart Clarinet Concerto, and all of a sudden I felt, oh my goodness, this is it.
And the beauty and grandeur of Baton Rouge's St. Joseph Cathedral. That's all about to happen on Art Rocks.
Like the impulse that drives an artist's creativity, Georgia Pacific's 850 Louisiana employees are driven to produce quality paper products for your home and business. Georgia Pacific is proud to support LPB and Art Rocks.
And by Lamar Advertising Company, proud to support the arts and Art Rocks. Headquartered in Baton Rouge, Lamar's 461 Louisiana employees have been helping brands and businesses reach their customers creatively for over 100 years.
Art Rocks is made possible by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and by viewers like you.
Hello and welcome to Art Rocks with me, James Fox Smith, publisher of Country Roads magazine. Now release your inner child because it's time to visit Baton Rouge's brand new Nocknock Children's Museum. It's taken 14 years of planning and perseverance to make this spectacular educational space a reality. But when your goal is to truly change children's lives, it pays to take your time. As museum director Peter Olson likes to say, if we do this right, kids would rather go here than to the amusement park. LPB's Andre Morrow leads the way.
Our favorite children's museum is actually in a small town in Mississippi, and I thought if they could have a children's museum, Baton Rouge should have a children's museum.
Knock, knock. Who's there? Let us. Let us in!
That knock-knock joke was the last hurdle before the doors opened to the state's newest children's museum. The founders say the Nocknock Children's Museum in Baton Rouge is a place for parents to bring their children and watch them explore and learn and enjoy. Check out the multicolored butterfly mobile, sponsored by Louisiana Public Broadcasting. The storybook climber, with books big enough for kids and adults to climb. And the kids' car wash, and much more. The museum is in constant motion.
We take a lot of pride in making sure that everything we do is irresistible to children and parent approved.
The dream that became this museum began with two moms, Kelly Stevens and Cricket Gordon.
Cricket and I used to talk all the time about our kids, and we talked about what could we do to make Baton Rouge a better community. I think we were both really concerned with the divide in Baton Rouge, and we kept talking, and from my experience working at the Houston Children's Museum, I knew that children's museums bring people together because everybody wants what's best for their children.
Almost 14 years, with more than $13 million raised later, this three-story glass and steel learning place has arrived.
One of the tricks of a children's museum is to use these really fanciful, immersive environments to launch imaginations. And then you pair that with really specific hands-on activities that support development and learning. And the two together just make children's museums like powerhouse in children's learning and development.
Olson says the challenge is keeping the museum vibrant and open. Money problems will force Shreveport's Siveport Discovery Center to shut down September 4th. It plans to reopen under the management of the team behind the new Shreveport Aquarium.
We have to raise money every year to keep the doors open. Since children's museums are such popular destinations, we anticipate about 60% of our annual budget being covered by earned income, but that means we have to raise about $900,000 every year just to sustain our operations.
People would ask us about sustainability and, will you ever be able to support yourself just on earned income? And the answer is no, because truthfully to me, if we're all on earned income, then we're not meeting our mission. We want this to be an experience that's open to people from all backgrounds, regardless of their ability to pay.
In the decade plus since the ideas that hatched Nocknock, there's been constant research and study.
Among our board members, I bet you we've covered almost every museum in the country, but we've also listened to some of the failures or some of the things, and we really want to be good stewards of our community's dollars in here and take care of them very well.
Well, I have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. And I know I'm just going to be able to enjoy this for a long time, and we plan on it.
Your thoughts as you look around and as you listen. I love the listening part because we're hearing birds and all sorts of things happening.
Laughter and children. It's been a long time coming.
No matter where you live in Louisiana, opportunities to connect with the arts are everywhere. The trick is knowing where to look. So here's a list of just a few of the festivals, concerts, destinations, exhibits, and interpretive events coming up around the state. To learn more about these and other events in Louisiana, keep your eyes peeled for a copy of Country Roads magazine. And while we're at it, LPB's Art Rocks website features an archive of previous episodes, so to see any episode again, just log on to lpb.org. Let's leave Louisiana briefly to hear from an abstract painter drawing inspiration from the music of the classical composers. Barry Liebman lives in St. Louis, Missouri, where we found his work on exhibit.
I decided to do this series of paintings on composers and what might have been their gardens if they had gardens. So it really became imaginary gardens. How their music inspired me to create a garden based on that music. I got interested in music as a subject matter. I was listening to Mozart Clarinet Concerto. And all of a sudden I felt, oh my goodness, this is it. This is something really moving while I was painting. So I closed my eyes and just let my hand move. And it was really a wonderful feeling. And so that's when I realized that music itself was the subject matter, not just the background. The idea was in my head from both wanting to do something musical and wanting to do something with something floral.
Well, I've known Barry for over 25 years now, and I've followed his work for probably about 15 to 20 years. I love the original approach he has to paintings, the exuberance, the meaning, the content. I think he has a nice control of color, and the materials that he uses are right up our alley. We like material-based work. And I love the collages, and I love to look at the work and actually see something or feel a content there. And I actually approached the work before I even knew it was about music, and saw something there that really appealed to me and really drove me to find out more about the material and about what he was doing. So it was really interesting when he told me it was about imaginary gardens and about music, and it was all connected.
For me, it's the layers of meaning in each painting. Because thinking about myself and what's important to me, it seems that we are all much more complex, much more evolved and involved with life than it appears just from the surface. So that, as I started to sort of understand what I was attracted to in art, which was different layers of material, I seemed to like, that's what I always would go to. That drew me, and I thought, well, this is what I'm interested in. The paintings don't represent my life. They're a conversation with me and me. The difference between having a conversation with you is picking up the clues of what your facial expression is, what you're saying back to me, and so forth. With a painting, it's just me and the painting having a conversation. Once I sort of feel that there's enough meaning there, then I start to feel really satisfied with the painting. Do you know what I'm saying? It was sort of a solitary experience that I really enjoy. Abstract art offers us another opening to intellectual and emotional pursuits and feelings. And, but you have to get, it takes a while to be attuned to it, I think. The paintings for me are both emotionally driven and intellectually motivating and stimulating. And I seem to need both. Sometimes the intellectual gets in the way when you stand back and you examine it too much. It can start to really, change the emotional impact of it. I need both the emotional and the intellectual. It's the same thing I feel about the literature that I read. It's not just the content, it's also the style. All the paintings are first done either with oil paint or oil sticks as a base. And then materials such as fabric, canvas board, I've used pieces of wood, I've used string. It sort of depends on what I have around and what I want to work on. But it's definitely materials based, which is part of what I feel is the layering of experience. So it's all sort of tied in. Over the past 20 years of doing this, I've realized that the paintings really come from an internal place that I need as I know more about myself and understanding of complexities of life. The paintings have more meaning to me, and the things that I want to work on, have more depth.
On to family heirlooms now. They might be priceless in sentimental terms, but how do you decide what great Aunt Edna's garden gnome collection is worth to others? Certified antiques appraiser Barbara Eash shares some insight into the appraisal process and offers tips about what kinds of questions to ask when you approach an appraiser yourself.
I really love telling people if their things are valuable, but it's as important to me and to them to tell them if it's not valuable. My name is Barbara Eash, and I am a professional certified appraiser specializing in antiques and collectibles. When I was a little girl, I liked antiques. I started liking older things as I grew older and just consumed books and books and books. But I love them. I love to read about them and study them. I have an immense library that I use. I write for magazines and newspapers. New information is surfacing all the time about some of these items. An appraiser is a person who has earned a designation within one of the main local or regional national agencies. Mine's with a Certified Appraisers Guild of America from out of Missouri. They've been defined that they lawfully can write appraisals, that's a certified documents. We have what we call category experts as appraisers. Maybe one gentleman only does firearms. Maybe another gentleman stamps, another lady of coins. Then there's a group of people like myself, we're called generalists. We weren't content with learning one thing. I started out in furniture and ivory, and textiles and dolls. You just keep learning, and once you see the authentic of anything, you automatically know when the next person brings in a reproduction or a copy that that's what it is. Through the years, I've had many pieces on parchment paper of photographs of Abraham Lincoln brought to us, and this one was brought in very gingerly. They wore cloth gloves, they unwrapped it, and they showed it to me. I asked them, well, where did you get this? And they said to me, well, we found it in New York. And I actually saw these sold in the airport for $5, but it looks so authentic. It's on parchment paper, it's discolored. They actually stain them to look like this. But of course, under the eye loop, you can tell immediately that it's nothing but a print, a reproduction piece. The most common things people bring in are things that Grandma said were valuable. And that would almost always be something that was sentimental to her. The number one they always ask first is, what is this worth? I want to know more about it. I've been told it's worth a lot of money, or I don't know a thing about it and I want you to tell me. Those are the things that they give me. What I would like for you to be able to tell me that it's been your family for 100 years. I want to hear that, because that means you just didn't pick it up at the flea market last week, which is okay too. Where did you get it? How long have you had it? What have you been told about it? If things are extremely sentimental, their expectations are very high. And if the item that I'm looking at really only has a very low value, I say something like this: I'm going to talk to you about your item, and I know it's extremely sentimental, but sometimes sentimental things, that's where all the value is. And I'm going to walk you down through the steps of why it doesn't have a high monetary value in today's society. Is it really what it looks like it is? Is it as old as people have said it is? And there are ways that we can, of course, track that down on national databases that we all have, but also it's in the eye of the appraiser. A good appraiser can look at an item if you set it in front of them, and almost before you take it out of the bag, they can tell you the age of it, and the value will also have to do with condition nowadays. The only things I haven't been able to appraise would be something if someone plops something on the table and it's a part of something. Most things that are bought and sold nowadays are only valued. We tell them, we share with them, even at many appraisal fairs, that's how it's done. It's just a verbal appraisal or approximation of the value. If I wanted a certified appraisal, I would have to come into your home or your site or your factory or your museum and take photographs. I have to do the measurements, I have to do research, and then computer time on top of that. So, and that makes it a legal document. In fact, if you're going to have a certified appraisal or an appraisal for your insurance company or your attorney, make sure that that person can defend their appraisal in court if necessary. You will have to pay money to have it done, but you will know exactly what you have and you will know exactly what you don't have. When people bring in items, there's always that hope that this is a find. If you can and you have a really stellar piece, remember that one thing is very important: condition, condition, condition. Nowadays, people are only, for their collections, they're only buying things that have a wonderful, really clean looking surface. Learn everything you possibly can before you invest a lot of money. If you see things that's a reproduction and you know it's a reproduction and it looks okay and that's all you can afford and you want to buy it anyway, yes, buy it, because then that can be added to your collection.
Back in Baton Rouge for our Louisiana Treasures segment. This week the focus is on the 2-century-old St. Joseph's Cathedral in downtown Baton Rouge. Soaring above the corner of North and Main Streets, this is a landmark that demands to be noticed and deserves to be used, appreciated and celebrated. Pastor Paul Kuntz gives us a glimpse.
St. Joseph Cathedral Church that you see now is the third church that the parish has had. The first one was in the late 1790s, the second one about 1830. They started the cornerstone of this church in 1853 and it took 3 years to build. The architect of the church was a Jesuit priest, Father John Cambiaso. He has designed many churches throughout the South, most notably the Jesuit Church on Baton Street in New Orleans, a completely different style of church. The fact that he could do more than one style shows his talent. The church, of course, has been expanded and redone a number of times. During the Civil War, it was shot up by Union gunboats on the river that were very, very accurate. After the war, we had to put a new roof on, a new back wall on. This was basically still just a very big square building until they put in the steeple in 1890 and put in the stained glass windows and mosaics in the early part of the 1900s. The overall architecture of St. Joseph Cathedral Church is what's called neo-Gothic or faux Gothic. It's not real Gothic in the sense that they have flying buttresses holding up the walls. It's all done with brick and stone. To be honest, St. Joseph Cathedral is a red brick church. They plastered over it on the outside, put stucco on the outside back in the 1800s because it gave a more uniform appearance. And of course there's white brick here on the interior, very exquisite brickwork. Most of the stained glass windows were fabricated between 1916 and 1922 in Germany. Some of them during the First World War, and we were at war with Germany at the time. But we were able to have them fabricated, shipped to neutral Switzerland, and then shipped on to the United States, even during that difficult moment of history. They are stained glass in the sense that each little pane of glass is a particular color, but they're also painted stained glass, which gives you the depth of detail in each scene. And you can see the delicacy of the features in their faces and the folds of their robes. All of the windows have Joseph as their theme. From Joseph in the Old Testament, and of course Saint Joseph, the husband of the Blessed Virgin Mary, who was there at the birth of Jesus, who was there at the visit of the three kings to Jesus, who was there at his presentation in the temple. There are lots of little things in the stained glass windows that many people don't notice the first time they look. There are snails in each stained glass window, for example, as a decorative item. There are little winged lions in the stained glass window. At the very top of each stained glass window are medallions showing a scene from the Old Testament. Very, very interesting. One thing I'd like to point out is the mosaic stations of the cross. They sometimes are sort of overlooked because the windows are so bright on either side of them. But each Station of the Cross is made up of thousands of little bitty tiny pieces of tile making up a scene from the Passion of the Lord Jesus, and really exquisitely done. I think the fact that people back in the 1920s and 30s knew how to do that with tiles is just fascinating. The mosaics were done in Italy. If you're looking up, you're noticing the wooden roof of the church. Most of those beams and a lot of the ceiling decking is original to the cathedral's renovation after the Civil War. The last major renovation of the church is what you can see in the distance behind me, the marble sanctuary, which was done in accord with the dictates of the Second Vatican Council. At that time in the Catholic Church, it became much more common for Mass to be said facing the people, with people gathered around the altar. And of course, in 1961, poor old St. Joseph Church became St. Joseph Cathedral, because St. John the 23rd, the Pope at the time, named this to be the cathedral church of the new Diocese of Baton Rouge. The sanctuary itself features a huge crucifix by the Croatian sculptor Mestrovic, Ivan Mestrovic. I guess you could probably agree that you couldn't just put a cross like that in anyone's living room. You need to have the space for it. We happen to have the space for it, and Bishop Tracy, our first bishop, was proud to be able to obtain that big mahogany crucifix and to enable an African-American sculptor, head of the arts department at Southern University, Frank Hayden, helped in putting together the cross that the body of Jesus sits on and hang it up there. And now we've reached the last thing that was put into the church. In 1992, to celebrate the 200th anniversary of the parish, Father Frank Reuter and the congregation at the time installed the massive Reuter organ. It is a grand organ in the French style that we put in as a present to ourselves on our 200th birthday. It puts out wonderful sound for our regular worship services and the occasional concert.
And that is that for this edition of Art Rocks. But if you can't get enough, you can always find episodes of the show at lpb.org/artrocks. And what's more, when you're ready to get out and engage with the unique Louisiana culture all around us, Country Roads magazine is your ideal travel guide. Published monthly, distributed widely. Pick up a copy or visit countryroadsmag.com. Until next week, I've been James Fox Smith, and thanks for watching.